Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's November 15, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It is an honor and pleasure to be here with Beth Lapides. Beth, where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm here from West Hollywood, Los Angeles, California.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
To let go of bestness.
Oh, I love that. Bestness. Let go of it. Well, letting go is a really big theme, and bestness is just, you are a wordsmith. What is your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't say I do have a favorite. I love pictures. I love listening to things. I love one to one. I love in person one to one information. Um, yeah, I like a variety.
That's good. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Oh, we're data driven. No, I don't know. Curiosity.
Yeah. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I would say innate survival. I mean, super basic to
Yeah.
survive. Information about the weather, information about where the food's coming from. I once read that I once read or heard that the our love for sparkly things, which I really identify with, our love for sparkly things is connected to berries. That when we were hunter gatherers, the berries were the things that would glisten through the leaves, and we were attracted to those, and how wonderful berries are. Can you imagine when you barely had, sticks
Amazing.
and bones to eat, and then you got a berry? So
No,
I,
that
I would say our need for information has something to do with, survival.
yeah, no, that was good. I love that. So what I'm into is like anecdote storytelling, things we learn. Like I looked at a berry this morning. And I mean, the look of it matched the taste. The taste, it was
Yeah,
perfect in that look. So that's good. Do thoughts create emotions?
absolutely. The first time I heard that idea, I was absolutely positively sure it was wrong. The first time someone told me that, I was like, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Obviously, I have an emotion, and that's why I have the thoughts I have. And then you start experimenting with it. And experimentation is, of course, the most wonderful thing. And you think, well, maybe I don't know everything.
Yeah,
And you start to notice that when you change your thoughts, you feel differently. The thing is, it requires patience. So much of value requires patience, and patience is in such short supply, and
yeah.
it's diminished by our need for data and our overwhelm for data. So what ends up happening is we have less patience. But I did take I did do the experiment, and I did notice that as I changed my thoughts persistently, not once, there's a cumulative thought, and that's what
Yeah.
creates the emotion.
Super cool, Beth. You really get it. It evoked McLuhan's great line: carefully make plans, then do the opposite. Yeah.
Carefully make plans and watch everything else affect how they don't work out.
Yeah. And then the other line is from my dear mother. She said, God, give me patience and give it to me now.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Fill in the blank, Beth, please. I don't know what I think until I.
Say it, write it,
No.
articulate it.
Whoa. You covered the waterfront. So I got it from McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Oh, well, those are my parents.
It's good. Can humans think without language?
Oh, that's interesting. I would say so. I mean, if you look at hieroglyphics, those are thought patterns, it's a story told.
That's
Yeah.
good. This is my brand new question, fresh off the New Yorker article I read. Does language more describe our world or create our world?
Oh, both.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the biggest question I think now facing us. This idea of manifestation, of which, you know, uh, there's all sorts of charlatan versions of it, but everything is vibration, thought is vibration, thought creates reality. But it's an infinity loop. I come so much to believe the shape of the infinity sign, which is the analemma that the sun traces in the sky every year, really defines. And that's why I call the wing of my work, that's the .edu wing. I call that the infinite creator, because of the essential infinitely shaped way that creation works. You do something, it affects your life, you grow, you do a different thing. The way you write affects your performance, affects the writing, affects the performance. The way you think creates the world creates what you think. I mean, it's this either orness in a sense that is diminishing. And I think the word and is so um, less respected than, I mean, we have an additive sense of moreness for sure in our culture. But my full name is Beth Ann Lapidus, and I have often thought of legally changing it to Beth and Lapidus.
Oh, that is brilliant. You are really a wordsmith, because I've never heard anyone do this. So let me make this clear. You said dot, like somebody has their email or website, something .edu, the letter E and then the letter D and then the U, and you were saying eduing, meaning the noun you is turned into a verb.
Oh no, I love that interpretation of it. What I was saying is edu wing, the wing of my, like a bird, like the wing, the division. But eduing, I also love that turning that into. I love to turn a noun into a verb. So sure, yeah.
That's, you know who it is? It's Bucky Fuller. He said, I seem to be a verb.
Well, there's that great book, and I sadly cannot remember the author's name, but there's a book called God is a Verb. It's a big Jewish theology book. And, a great book will change your life even by the title. And
That's it.
that did really shift my thinking.
No, that was great, because it really is from American Indians, indigenous. They have no nouns, it's all verbs.
Love that.
So that's really great, because one of my teachers taught me was, everybody goes around .com, my website, blah 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 .com, and it's like, do you know what .com stands for? Communism. The internet is the most communistic thing ever invented. Fucking hippies on LSD invented the internet, and then it got hijacked.
Oh, is that true? It was not commerce?
No, it is commerce,
Oh,
but
I see.
like,
I see.
you saying
Yeah.
ed wing, like, words evoke more
Yeah.
than
Oh, yeah,
meaning.
for
We
sure.
can, words evoke. So this is funny, because Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Sounds like he was going to Beth Lapides shows. So my question is, Beth, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down?
Uh, it's such a good question. Well, action. I mean, didn't our moms all tell us actions speak louder than words?
Yeah.
And silence. You meditate and you listen for new words. It's not a lack of words. Sometimes it's a lack of how we put them together. So,
Yeah.
um, but it's interesting. I once heard Carolyn, and I never had know how to say her last name, Meese, um, the healing spiritual person. I once heard her speak, and this was about 10, 12 years ago. And she got so frustrated at one point, And she was just like, oh, I just don't know how to say it. We just don't have the language for it yet, and I think language evolves and the way we talk about things evolves. So what your mom said, patience and give it to me now. We don't, when the paradigm shifts, which is what is happening, or the whole experiment ends, then we need new language. We're shifting into different ways of being and talking. So we need different ways to talk about it and us.
Really good. Yeah. Thelonious Monk said, silence is the loudest sound in the universe.
Yeah. If you ever had anyone give you the cold shoulder treatment, you know that for sure.
Yeah, this is a stupid question, but I know it's both and it depends. But your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
God, this is one of those either or questions, Jerry. You're killing me here. I mean, I do think that our systems are. I mean, we're thinking, but we're also feeling. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the interrelate. We're more connected beings. We're more like the connection of thoughts and feelings. I mean, a computer can think, not a human. And with only with only feelings, you have what became, what we're witnessing in America now, the maddening crowd of, feeling, frustration and madness. Though I hate to use a party's name, but that
Yeah.
whole movement of feeling left out and feeling not enough and feeling all these feelings. But if it's just thought, you leave out love, and love is a motivating force of humanity. So, I mean, I really think that it's the connection, and
Yeah.
it's this connection. If I could just say, having grown up on the East Coast and Ivy League, and it wasn't, at least at the time I was there, a very feeling. It wasn't feeling positive. There wasn't a culture of feeling there. I think that may have changed in the past decade or two. And without thought, it's just this maddening overwhelm of feelings so it's this really the connection. This is really also, I think, where the divine feminine comes in, and where we're moving in. If you could say that the male yang force is a more thinking element, and that the female yin force is more the darker element and more feeling oriented, and the marriage of these two, I mean, it's the two-ness. I just can't.
Yeah.
And as we move into the 2000s and the 2022s, and I mean, this is off. If I have a minute to
Please.
declaim about this,
Please.
one of the defining events, certainly, of our time was 9/11. And it was that the two towers. I mean, we know there was
Yeah.
more that happened than the two towers, but the image was these two towers coming down. And not only the collapse of the dominant male image, but that it was a two, and that it happened on an 11. I mean, if you want to think about,
Yeah.
having your attention thrown at something, this is what it is. This is where we are. This
Yeah.
has to be that
Yeah.
the thinking and the feeling are intertwined.
Yeah. No, it's really well put. And that's what it's about, Beth, is me and you are looking at these questions and the wording together, and you're able to go, well, I'll change the verb on your question. That's what I want to do. Just, I got a lot of these questions from the great Christine McKenna. She was my spark 30, 40 years ago. I'll tell you when we get to that question, but it's like I've been sort of juggling how to word these questions. And what I most welcome is when someone says, well, I don't like this woman a couple months ago goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. I says, is it more this or more that? I says, that's what I want. I want you to help me like psychoanalyze the wording on the question. But this connection thing was great. And I wanted to tell you what I love. Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. You're doing the most sensuous thing. And you're like, shut your brain down. It's like meditators. They say, don't think about thinking, you know.
Right. Well, after so many years of meditating, that's yeah, don't think about thinking, but just think. Just
Yeah.
think when you think and don't think when you don't think. I mean,
Yeah.
meditation is the greatest exercise in acceptance. So,
Yeah. That's good. Acceptance. So must have ESP because immediately when you start answering that last question, you answered one of these two Turing questions. So this from 1950, Alan Turing's. The first one is thinking a function of the soul?
oh, wow. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Maybe. I mean, I think of the soul as sort of I think of the soul, I don't know if I've ever even articulated this, but I think of the soul as a vehicle that you enter, you're in, and it has a sort of navigating system, and it leads you, and that one of the functions of meditation, in fact, is a higher ability to be able to listen. In Vedic meditation, we call it, follow your charm. In other systems, I'm sure there's other wording, but so thinking would be an element in, thinking. It's funny. This is the last thing I'll say about this. Thinking makes it sound like it's something you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it sound like you're really in control of it.
Yeah.
And you can change your thinking. You can decide to think certain things and you can adjust your thinking. And that is something that does happen. But many times, I mean, especially as a creative person, you have to start noticing, like, this thought kind of just came to me. Like, I didn't think it.
Yeah.
So where did it come from? Maybe your soul communicates it to your ego. Maybe the higher consciousness gives it to I don't know what. Oh gosh, Jerry. Now those are the mystery, the great mystery. Now we're
Yeah.
into
Well,
the great
Beth,
mystery.
this is so fun because you anticipated the next question one
Oh,
step before, and now you anticipated the other next question. So
I'm
you're
getting
like
into
you got double duty in tarot bang ESP. So here's the second Turing question: can machines think?
in a sense, I mean, they can. I think I think I'm going to say that thinking is more complex than one word. There's logical thinking, maybe there's intuitive thought. We maybe need more words for thinking. I don't know if it's true that there's all those words, Inuit, I don't know if there's a million words for snow as we were once told, but
Yeah.
it seems like there should be more words for thinking than we have,
Yeah.
because isn't the idea of invention is a kind of thinking, but machines certainly can think on a rudimentary level. I mean,
Yeah.
your computer's thinking about what your password is every minute of the day.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, remembering is a kind of thinking, and your
Yep.
computer remembers for you.
Yep. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Oh, Jerry, you with your or questions.
We're gonna get out of the or questions pretty soon, by the way.
I think I I've tried to understand really specifically what consciousness even is. And I don't even know if this is a real etymological thing, but at some point I started to think of consciousness as con being with, and
Yeah,
shus is like from the same word that science is from.
yeah.
There's a root there. So I think of consciousness as literally the science of withness.
Oh, that is good.
And so insofar as thought connects us, I guess I would say thought
Yeah,
creates consciousness, but it can go the other way.
yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I've had such a hard time with happiness. I can't give you a short answer to this. I have struggled with happiness, the idea of it, so so presently. When I was younger, and I grew up in a very middle class, very middle class, just, and my mom used to tell me, just as long as you're happy, without giving me one clue as to how that would be achieved. But I just thought happiness seems so bourgeois. I mean, I was just like, what even is it? I don't even want it. But then, one day you're a little older and you wake up very unhappy and you think maybe there was something to that idea of happiness. Uh, and so I started really looking into it. Like I did like an investigation. It was like a really like very methodical, like it was my work. Like sit down at your desk and really think about it. And what I came to ended up being a title of a show, which was 100% happy 88% of the time. The idea being that, people try to sell you on this idea. We're being sold all the time. If you just do this, if you just do that. And, more or less people are saying, if you do these things, you will be 100%, you will be happy. Like it's a thing and you can be it. And, what I came to believe was that you could be 100% happy, though you could be, but that's ambitious, 100% happy 88% of the time if you were willing to be 100% unhappy the other 12% of the time. So again, it's one of these infinity loops of the back and the forth. And it all comes down to change. I mean, change is the change. So, I mean, for me, I could be miserable, and if I knew what it meant, I could get by. I don't think I can. For me, the blithely unhappy, blithe unhappiness seems questionable. I don't think I could live that way. Not for me, but I don't judge anybody who can live that way. I think people are different. And I do think for me, it comes to being able to change. And as I was doing this work, I came up with this equation: change. Change makes us unhappy because we cling, and so it's hard to change. But we have to change to be happy because life is change. So we have to be unhappy to be happy.
No, that's very good.
That's my science, Jerry. That's some Beth Lapides science and math right there.
you know what you talked about is heavy because it's beautiful. Like you said, I sat at my desk and I did my research. So this is jujitsu. The word jujitsu in judo is give and take, push and pull, yin and yang.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Jujitsu actually means science and art softly. Isn't that amazing? It's like I can't because I study etymology. I was like, what the fuck? This is amazing word.
Yeah.
Okay, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Isn't it the same?
Oh, that's a great answer. Okay. Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
Right.
Yvonne Rainer responded to her and says, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Oh, wow. New tool. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to say kindness is what came to mind. So isn't kindness the least new thing?
Yeah.
It's not new. So I don't know if that's
no, that's fine. Answer. See, again, you put just because I open these questions with a cute quote or the wording isn't just perfect, you put the questions in the context you want. Most people are saying things like intuition. They're saying, they're not saying this is a new tool. Kindness, we'd hope, was been around forever. But I wanted to go back. I forgot to tell you, where I got that happiness and meaning question was from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't necessarily last and meaning does.
Well,
So
yeah, and if you have meaning, I think happiness is such a strange construct. It was funny, when I was doing the research, I did an original audiobook last year called So You Need to Decide. And I was doing some research on decision making. It was a narrative book filled with stories and ideas and conversations I've had with, smart, funny people. And what's really interesting, besides the fact as a lover of etymology, you'll appreciate decide the word comes from all the same words that suicide, homicide, the side words. And so one of the things that makes it so difficult is we do have this sense of a violence about decision making. You are cutting off options, you are killing some options that didn't exist. And but it didn't really come into effect until I'm going to say, and this is where somebody's going to have to fact check me on this. When were all the revolutions in the 1830s, 1860s, all the revolutions in Europe were which decade? Which decade?
sounds good. It's somewhere there. Yeah,
All
whatever.
the revolutions where it was like, the people rise up and
Yeah.
taking down the royalty. That's when the word decision started to be used. And in a sense, decision is a super modern idea that we get to decide. And I wonder about happiness as well, whether, it's such a modern construct, and does it originate in the idea that, of choice and decision? Is it, how are we making our decisions? And as Viktor Frankl says, meaning is what moves us and really what gives us foundation. So, deciding around your life to create a life with meaning, it might sound too like heady for people or something. I don't know, but it's certainly a very Jewish idea.
Well, I like you bringing up this thing about modern construct, because it reminds me of this McLuhan thought that sounds really, he's chalked off as a charlatan and he's a jokester, but people want to treat him, like the TV guru. He got his picture on the cover of Newsweek magazine, got in a Woody Allen film. But he said point of view was started when the painters started doing the vanishing point
Right.
in paintings. And
Yeah.
it's like, he has this great line that understanding is not having a point of view. That understanding is understanding the big picture and not what's called suspended judgment. So like you saying, decide is cutting off your options. Well, in order to understand anything, you have to know this end of the spectrum and that and everything in between. But in your lonely teenage room, you can still go, I hate Facebook or I love Facebook. You can have a point of view or a bias, but when you're with one or more persons, if you can sort of cut down on that, you might be able to suss out like a bigger picture view.
Well, I don't know what happiness is, but I do experience more of it once I decided to have less opinions.
There you go. See? So McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. So, by artists, I mean comedians,
Yeah.
writers, painters, musicians. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so
Sure.
that we may be able to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Beth, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
We're naughty.
That is a fun, but you got to suss it out. You want to leave it at that, or you want to suss out what
I
you mean?
want to leave it at that.
That is great. Naughty. I love people who can say the answers to my stupid questions in one word. That is sharp. Okay.
Although there is one other part of your question I would like to address, which is the pineal gland, and which is, as I'm sure your listeners and viewers are well aware, is the so-called seat of our intuition, or the physical seat. And one thing they may not know, which I discovered in my vast research, was that at the Vatican, right outside the Vatican, not a big cross, not a big picture of Jesus or Mary. Outside the Vatican, giant acorns. And acorns are, of course, the symbol of the pineal gland. And, a lot of things that are in the modern world, various foods, various kinds of pollution, various ideas are corrupting of the pineal gland, the seat of our intuition. And I would prevail upon us as a community to protect that before we lose our sense of intuition. This is one of the important things that we need to do.
Yeah, it's good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh, everything. And I don't know. I worry about, geez, what do I worry about? The usual physical things, the more interesting than what I worry about. Obviously, pollution and the end of the world and being Jewish and are they going to come get me and being a woman and abortion and is my partner going to be okay? All the usual things. Family, friends. Is this one okay? Is that one all right? Um, why don't I have a better pillow? I should really be, did I get enough done today? The usual. I mean, everything.
That's
But I try, I really do try to not worry I really have tried to train myself out of worry. There's that, this is the greatest, this is a thought to really keep close at hand and to train yourself in. Worry is prayer in reverse.
Oh, that's good.
And but what I really do try to do is uh a kind of warfare against worry thoughts. I mean, those are the thoughts, but except for on like the worst election days when really you can barely sleep because you're worried about it. I
Yeah,
really try to focus my mind in that time. And I'm not saying like I'm a guru in this and I do it all the time, but my practice is if I haven't fallen, to sometimes there's, the white light to give thanks to,
yeah,
I really do all the practices because it doesn't help. I mean, that doesn't help at all. The worry
yeah,
doesn't help.
yep. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Oh, I'm much more afraid of the past than the future.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yes. And it wasn't until I opened a Tumblr account all those years ago when we were using Tumblr, and Tumblr somehow asked that same question. And I thought about what it was, and then I had to say, thank you, Tumblr. Um, I was probably 3, maybe 4. I have to check with my family. And I mean, I have a vague memory before that, but it's extremely vague. But this is super clear. And my family was moving from one place to another place on the same street. And I was on my father's shoulders and we were walking from the one place to the other place. And I remember in this memory is a thought, which is, why are we moving? It's on the same street. Like I knew there were variables that I didn't understand, but I really didn't get what they were.
Is
It just
memory
seemed like a big effort to move like 8 houses down. And, as an adult, it was like, oh, we went from an apartment to a house to like a townhouse. It was like there was a financial thing. And I knew there was something like that, but I didn't get it at all. But I do think that memory has shaped a lot of my life. I have a big story around moving and homes and being at home and not being at home and what does home mean? And that's the next book I'm writing on. But anyway,
nice.
that's my first
Is
memory.
is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Both. It's another
Yeah,
both.
Yeah, it's a
I
both.
mean, forgetting is a great liberator.
Yep.
Forgive and forget. It is one of the great liberators, but
Yep.
you don't create meaning. I mean, look, meaning isn't, if you're going to pick up that thread of this conversation, meaning is not is not an intellectual construct. It has to do with story, and memory is how we get our story. So without, and this is one of the beautiful things about being a writer. You think and you think you've remembered, and then you sit down to write it and you're like, oh.
Good word there. That was like, how do you spell that word?
Ah.
We don't need no stinking language. We can just go. So tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
I don't know. I don't have that person in my, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't anyone in my family
Yeah.
that, I mean, my grandmother was kind of a mean person, but she did have a great laugh and love jewelry. And
So you got some from her.
I got
Tell
that.
me.
My mom, I would say, my mom was tough, but I remember super specifically, there was a moment, I probably was in my early teen years, tween or early teen. And I remember really specifically, we were in the kitchen. It was before dinner, where she was kneeling at a cabinet, and I was irritating her somehow. And she just looked up at me and said, "This too shall pass." And I remember thinking, even then, like, I am this. In this case, I am this. And it was like such a profound, unwitting spiritual lesson. She wasn't trying to tell me, like, you have to come to terms with your own morality. She was just saying, like, for her, like, you can't get me mad because this too shall pass. But in essence, what she was telling me is, like, you're going to die. I mean, you will die. You are going.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really need, because I was a sick kid in the hospital and I learned like every lesson. I mean, at 5, everything, there's that book, everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. Well, everything I needed to know I learned in the hospital. And but people who have influenced me beyond that, I mean, more nameably, would be Joni Mitchell. And then I had the opportunity to have a couple of dinners with her, which was amazing. And I had a high school English teacher who was just so opened up every door of literature to me. And I mean, that was so important, to meet Gertrude Stein in high school. And
That's
yeah.
that's a good layering there. Well, so you were raised Jewish. Are you still practicing? Are you cultural Jewish, or did you check out?
I don't think you ever check out of Judaism.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck.
Do you pray?
There is no door out. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
there
exit
is
door
no
to
door
Judaism.
out. That's good. Well, I don't think anybody checks out any religion they're raised, but the funny question is, the funny pattern I found is people our age, I ask them, were you raised a particular religion? Then they say, fill in the blank. And then I go, did you ever check out? And 80 to 90% say, I checked out between 13 and 18. Like, what age? So they checked out. Then
Oh.
I just follow it up with, do you pray?
Well, I do pray, but I
Yeah.
don't pray I try sometimes to say a Shema, but mostly I pray in English. I I really love mystical Judaism, which I wasn't raised in. I was raised, conservative suburban New Haven, and it didn't resonate at all. It was hard to check out. I was barely I mean, I did the bar mitzvah circuit, and I don't think I understood what Judaism really meant. I knew
Yeah.
there was, I understood the high holidays, which are so beautiful and all that. But, when I when I realized, like, oh, I'm a really soulful, spiritual person, which, a lot of it came with yoga and new agey stuff in LA. And I like to say there's a very, it's a fine line between a tchotchke shelf and an altar.
That's very good. That's
And
Frank Zappa. He has this great line, "Curse of the knick-knack people."
yeah, I mean, and now I would say, there was a part of my journey. I wish we had another word for that. But, at one point I was given 10,000 crystals to give away and all this, research that I did, and everything is vibration, and watching all the videos of, sound waves creating
Yeah.
patterns, and listening to Whitley Strieber's show, and, you know, the whole thing. I mean, the
Right.
whole thing. And it's so great. And if you didn't have to like do anything in your life, couldn't you spend all day, you know, trying to understand? I mean, I spent like a year taking pictures of orbs in my backyard. I went deep. I am a great advocate of believing is seeing and all of that. And
Yeah.
I've really gone in.
Yeah.
And but as the farther I go down, down the line, though, that implies some linear idea. Um, the more and more I divest myself of the tchotchkes, though I'm looking at my desk as we're speaking, and I have maybe, I have a couple little crystals, and I have various things, but it's very minimal at this
Yeah.
point. It's very minimal.
If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, yeah, that's one of those pivot questions. Um, well, I believe God does exist, though I'm always God, goddess, higher consciousness, the one that is the higher creator. I don't know. Um, Thank you.
Good. That was beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Isn't that the same thing, though?
Very good. The hidden question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set up a few thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts, Beth,
You
but the
notice these are all men. What does one woman say
I
about it?
know, I know. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I think maybe an
I
enemy is a male construct.
well, this is the thing. I sorry that they were all men. I know I need to flesh that out in a better balance. But before you tell
Okay.
me, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? How would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
If you acknowledge them as an enemy or as a human?
Well, that's a good question. You're answering a question with a question. That's what this series is all about. So you win. But I mean, in general, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
I literally have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really tried to create a life where I mean, what the enemies that I can see are not personal. I don't have personal enemies.
Oh, that's
My
yeah.
enemies are so gigantic that, the enemy, the enemy within, the enemy of, you know, you asked at the beginning, best. I mean, this idea of best something. And am I doing my best to save the world from climate disaster? Have I done my best? I mean, that kind of thought. And so I do feel I have enemies. I feel those enemies are everyone trying to take away, who are the enemies of women, though, not the enemies of
Yeah.
Beth Lapides.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Because
I
Ram
have had
Dass,
people listen, I've had people F me over.
yeah,
Don't think I haven't. I mean, I live in Hollywood, and I've
yeah.
had plenty of knives, you know, bam, bam, bam. But I don't consider, in a certain way, it's not the traditional idea of an enemy, because an enemy can really take something from you. And if in essence, you are here on earth, which I believe, to manifest, that we each have our own path.
Yeah.
And your path is unfolding in a divine and perfect order. And how I came to believe that is, as a Jew, that's a gymnastic event. But
No.
who are the enemies of most of us? Sure, if you're in the mafia, yeah, you have an enemy and you all have guns and you're all killing each other and everybody wants more money. But if you live in a world, I mean, this is partly about the giant consciousness shift, which I pray. I mean, I pray this is really happening, is
Yeah.
that, we start to feel the lack of otherness and the lack of an enemy is a very old fashioned idea and has to do with separation,
Yeah.
when the giant thought we need to move towards is that we are all one. If we are all one, there are no enemies, though there are opportunities, there are challenges, there are disturbances in the field, there's all that. But an enemy, I mean, yeah, I mean, I just would say there are people that I tend to drift away from me personally. I
Yeah.
drift away from that situation.
Yeah. That's Ram Dass has a great line. I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like
Yeah.
fill in the blank. I'm having a real hard time loving Trump or Putin. It's like, what else can we do? But if you say that to anyone, they'll get away from me, so let's move on. This is James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, yeah, thanks for laughing. Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think we can come back to, one of the themes of this conversation, which is meaning.
Yeah.
And, also the idea. I mean, I love that thing that you said about point of view and opening, your expanded awareness. And I don't know, I was watching a Japanese detective show last night. I mean, that wouldn't be in my experience. So the reason that I watch it is I'm not watching a tree. That's very Andy Warhol, though. Maybe I could just watch that. But expanded awareness, and because we're watching things. I mean, James Joyce, that's so provincial. I mean, why should we read your book? I love James Joyce. I read Ulysses twice, but um, but nevertheless, for meaning, for organization, to learn what other people think, to
Yeah.
understand what we experience.
Yeah. And so, Beth, just walk us through a little briefly. How did you get to the tipping point where you said, I want to be a writer, I want to be a comedian? I mean, those are your two main things, writer and comedian. Where were the tipping points? You're growing up, you're reading things, you go, that's what I want to do.
It was a little bit of a heartbeat. And those weren't my words. I wanted to grow up to be an artist, as you said at the beginning. The word artist and
Yeah.
everything that it included.
Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to grow up and be an artist. At Brown, you were allowed to make your own major, and I majored in modes of expression, art, dance, and writing, and studied the difference between the different modalities and how you would use them differently. And I moved to New York with a very naive idea of what it would be to be an artist, without any real thought of what the life would be. But sometimes ambitious naivete. I started making one of a kind books, and they were pretty successful pretty fast. I got into like a show at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's library very early, and they started to get into shows. And then I thought, God, what's the next thing that can happen for these? I mean, is to sell them to rich people, because how else would it? And without realizing, yeah, that is what the art world is. Nobody had told me
Yeah.
that. Like, selling art to rich people, that's what the gig is.
Yeah.
And unless you're printmaking, which I'd studied. So those were like visual and Right. I mean, I think I've just always written. I mean, I've always read, I've always written. It's just from the beginning of my, just that's what I do. I didn't
Yeah,
even call it a writer. I just
yeah,
write.
yeah,
Um, and I would say, once I realized what the art world was and that it was a lot of stuff, I just knew it wasn't the right place for me exactly with my creativity. So I decided I was going to make the books, but make them really big and tell the stories. I missed performing, but I knew I didn't want to be a dancer or choreographer. So what was I going to do? So I made these giant books and told the stories in front of them. And I was part of the New York performance art world. And I got a grant for that work. And that was going really well, and that was being a writer, but in a different way. And then the work was getting kind of funny, and I was very funny for a performance artist. And then I just sort of felt like I was still in my 20s, and I'm like, am I really going to be a performance artist my whole life? Like, is that what I'm gonna do? It just seemed weird. I don't know. I was
yeah,
just like, I was tired of having to explain it. It seemed like I was in a little corner. It didn't seem like it was gonna be expansive enough to really spend my whole life doing that. And I really loved being funny. And so I tried going into the comedy world, but always with the heart of an artist, which has made me a rebel within the world. But so right around there, and that was really the hardest thing I had ever done, was to make that shift, because
yeah,
I was already a pretty successful performance artist. I was touring, I was going to beautiful venues, I was getting big press, I was getting grants, but I just couldn't see a whole life of it. And
yeah,
I just didn't when I to go back to my idea about creativity and growth, I didn't say it that way, but and I remember really clearly, again, a story like of being out on the street and walking, like with my dad on my dad's shoulders. I'm walking in New York, and I'm walking to a gig, and a clickety clickety clack of my boots on the pavement, and mesmerized by the walking. And you get, it's such a great meditative thing with the walking thing. And I asked myself this question. I mean, okay, you live, and then finally you get it, and then you die. Like, is that what it is? And then I thought, if that's what it is, that's either so tragic or so hilarious. And then I was like, but what is it? And then I was like, I think you get to choose. Like, I think you get to choose whether it's tragic or hilarious. And I don't know if you do, but if you do get to choose, then I'm going to choose hilarious. And that
yeah,
might be Jewish. And then if I'm choosing that it's hilarious, wouldn't I have to then in my work focus on reflecting that deeply held belief? And it was at that point that I started shifting, and it didn't happen all at once. I kept doing
yeah.
the performance art and touring the shows, but I also was starting to work in comedy clubs and kind of going back and forth. And I find the word comedian to be a very artificial modern construct, and I've never loved it. But those were my decision moments.
Beautiful, Beth. So well put. Can you forget to die?
Oh my god, that is a great science fiction movie. Maybe you
Yeah.
can. Well,
A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process, say, when you're writing a book now?
well, I would say the intention to connect,
Yeah, it's
both to
great.
myself, both to a higher power, both to my past, both to an audience. I say the word both over and over again as if there's two. I use both very freely.
Well, actually, you anticipate the next question. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your audience or your reader when you're writing your book?
0% and 100%.
Wow. Your full picture. This is great. So Marshall McLuhan says that everything we invent extends some humanness. And now let me tell you, I love that you put the word ness after Bess at the beginning of the art of letting go of bestness, because McLuhan actually says everything we invent extends some human sensorium. But I call it humanness. So knife and fork extend our teeth. Shutter
Oh,
in a
that's cool.
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, clothing extends our skin. Shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. In
Mm,
like even non-tangible, religion or philosophy extends consciousness,
mm.
whatever. What does the writing utensil, whether it's a keyboard or a pencil, what does the writing utensil extend for you? What humanness?
Heartbeat.
Oh, that's good. Heartbeat. So let's go to comedy just for a second. What's the function of laughter?
Laughter is orgasm with your, without the dirty part.
Boy, you got the greatest words. Naughty, dirty part. Okay. So, Gurdjieff says laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no.
Oh, Jesus. Sure. Sure. I do. That is actually an amazing quote.
What
Uh,
is but I mean, why did you say, oh, Jesus? I'm curious. Suss that
it's
out. Because
so haughty. I mean, men and their intellectualisms. I mean, it just feels good. But yeah, I mean, I have to say, I mean, it does. It is partly what I've been saying in this whole
yeah,
conversation. It's neither yes nor no, and
yeah,
laughter is a. I mean, to be technical about it, you laugh when you're surprised, and
yeah,
there is a delight to surprise, and especially the more we feel, and I grew tired of the art audiences too, which was one reason I moved,
yeah.
because you go to things as an art audience and it's everything and you're so jaded, and the unwillingness to be surprised, and
Yeah,
partly because the art world is so geared towards this sort of cleverisms.
yeah.
Early in my career as a comedian, I did an audition for someone, and he told me that my work was too grounded in its own cleverness.
Oh my
I
God.
got so mad, and, I was like, he would never say that to a man, and it's only because 'cause I'm a woman or a girl, probably, I thought at that time, and, you know, then
No,
15
I understand
oh,
what
wait
you're
a minute,
saying. Yeah.
15 years later,
Oh, yeah.
I was working on my shit, and I was like, "Oh, man, I'm too grounded in my own cleverness." If only I hadn't had this prejudice of like, and maybe it was true that I wouldn't have gotten that comment if I had been gendered differently,
Yeah,
but there is a certain emotionalness to laughter. It's a release.
yeah,
It's being willing to be surprised. It's delight. But I do, we can also be tricked into laughter. There
yeah,
are so many technical things that can work on us, and it was one of the rebellions I had in that being in the comedy clubs was, there is a certain rhythm that we have gotten used to hearing that triggers a laugh response without
yeah,
any content, and I found it to be insidious, and
yeah,
I found it to be almost repulsive. And
yeah,
when I started in comedy, I was told, somebody, for a booker, s- called me out after a set and said, just don't get it. I mean, they're listening, like literally sitting there quietly listening to you, but you're not getting laughs. Like that never happens. Like, and
yeah,
he kept booking me because it like drove him crazy. And then finally one day he was like, I figured it out. I figured it out. You're not getting laughs because you're doing it in the wrong rhythm. It's like, in music, if in rock, it's like if you go in rock and roll, but you do 1, 2, 3, and not 1, 2, 3, it's like the whole thing's
yeah,
wrong. So comedy is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, but you're doing 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's what you have to change. I swear to you, I walked around New York. I was like, that's genius. Oh my God, I'm going to try it. So I walked around New York and I was just like, 1, 2, 1, 2. And it actually kind of worked because part of comedy is you have to be a little bit, you can't
Yeah.
be afraid of the punch. You have to be willing to emphasize. And I think maybe I was holding back, but of course, then once I learned that, a lot of my career has been, Uncabaret was really a response to breaking out of that rhythm and a embrace of the fact that everybody's voice, everybody. I once said, and I quote myself because I don't know where it came from. So coming through me was this idea. Um, the rhythm of your voice is the wave that your inner truth rides in on.
Wow.
And I really learned that by listening to recordings of Uncab, I would be in the other room listening to a recording. I would just hear the rhythm. And I know this is Bob Odenkirk. This is Julia Sweeney. This is Taylor Negron. This is Dana Gould. This is Patton Oswalt. I could just hear the rhythm of their voice and the sound of their voice. And it really woke me up to a part of language. I know that's a big part of your interest, so I'm just dwelling on this for a minute. A part of language that isn't in the words, a part
Yeah.
of language that transcends words, but is the sound coming out of your mouth. It's the tone, it's the feel, it's the vibration. When God said the word and, created the world. What was the word? The word was no word. The word was simply a word. And so, I don't know. I feel like I've painted myself into a little corner. I'm not sure where to end, but those are some thoughts
No,
around.
it was truly enlightening. And I'm serious. This is really fun. And you evoked a poet said, the poet in his work entails the work of seeing the world without language, then bringing that seeing into language.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's
So
like that.
you
That's
could
what I
just
mean.
substitute hearing, and that
Yeah.
rhythm thing is amazing. And I could just see you walking down the street. But I'm sorry, I do quote a lot of males. I try to
No,
keep
I don't mind at all, but I just was noticing it about the enemy issue because I
yeah,
wonder if I don't generally gender divide ideas, and I love that
yeah,
we now have a spectrum because now there's more than one gender and
yeah,
I don't have to worry
yeah.
about it anymore. But
But
I just think that in that particular topic,
yeah,
I feel like, and it's not your fault that, a lot of the big thinkers that we know about have been male because, that's intellect.
that's whose aphorisms gets repeated. But it is an important thing, and you brought it to my attention in the middle of the enemy quotes, because that's one where I do 4 or 5. There should be a couple women, because I do Audre Lorde and Yvonne Rainer early on, and then a lot of feminists like go, oh, okay, because I've had attacks. They go, you're quoting too many males. But in regards to all that, I have to quote one of my heroes, Phyllis Diller. She said, housework won't kill you, but why take a chance? And I fill in the
I love
blank.
that.
I go, Zooms won't kill you, but why take a chance? Cinema won't kill you, but why take a chance? But what Steve Allen taught, well, actually, McLuhan loves Steve Allen saying this. I'm just curious of your, again, 2 males, sorry, is your opinion of this. Behind every joke, there's a grievance. Now, I don't like the word every there, but just behind jokes, there's a grievance.
I don't even like the word jokes. I'm so antithetical to jokes.
Right,
For me, the greatest comedy is story. But when you first said that, what I really heard was the word grieve.
right.
And I never had really connected grievance with grief. And I will say that the giant equation, well acknowledged and attributed to many different people, um, pain plus time equals comedy.
Yeah,
So that's maybe a more elevated way to think about it. Pain, then behind every joke is a grievance, because pain plus time equals comedy. Yes, and I would tell people I'm working. It's like, if you think about pain as sadness, jealousy, um, impatience, heartbreak, any kind of loss. And, the smaller the pain, the less time it takes. Is that's what when you hear people say too soon about comedy, that's because it has enough time passed for the size pain that it is.
Yeah. Well, here's a question I've asked in the past. Can satire be destructive? And of course, if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill you, some people think dying is destructive. But my friend who wrote with Robin Williams, when I said, can satire be destructive? He said, that's the job of satire. Now, we understand what Swift said is satire is a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
I don't know. Can I honestly take a pass on this?
Oh,
Satire is
yeah.
it's so exhausting to me.
Yeah.
I don't. It's just like I'm like, just
No,
make a
that's fine.
thing. Does it have to be a thing about another thing? I don't know. I have enjoyed some satires, but I don't know. I haven't really wrapped my mind around that idea.
Right. No, that's fine. And so, what do you think the motive of the cave artist was?
God, I just think that it's just that, like I said about myself as a youngster, this drive. Like,
Yeah.
what would be I don't think that, you're sitting there thinking like, well, I think generations to come will need to know that we had three bison here. Uh, it's just like, what's a bison? What would it look like? I need to translate it. I don't know. I have this urge to put it on I just think it's an urge. I think the urge
Urge.
is, communication maybe
Yeah.
to the kids. Maybe there's no other way to, maybe, kids are coming out of ladies,
Yeah.
and there should be some information. Maybe
Yeah.
it's beauty. I think, we haven't used the word beauty at all here. And I think
Oh,
that,
right.
that is a driving force, the creation of beauty in the world, and
Yeah.
to create a beautiful world, and to create beauty out of ugliness. This alchemy. I mean, to me, comedy is an alchemy of pain into laughter, and messiness in art, confusion and messiness into beauty. This alchemy is such a mesmerizing idea to me.
It's beautiful. In fact, we're reading Finnegan's Wake in the Dublin reading group today, and we came across one word that Joyce invented by putting chaos and cosmos together. So
Oh,
you don't have to read 628 pages of this gobbledygook. You can just read one word. It's the DNA. Chasmos. It's chaos and cosmos. So it's like that's alchemy. You take two known things, you put them together, and you come up with a third unknown thing.
yeah.
So what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Well, I want to say both, but let me just give you a thoughtful answer. Without conviction, there is no compromise, because what are you compromising from? Yeah, without conviction, there is no compromise.
Yeah,
But but without compromise, there is still conviction. So
yeah,
conviction wins.
yeah. Well, this is interesting because it brings up begs for Louis Buñuel said, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it." So yeah,
Yeah.
99% of people go, "Oh yeah, that's great," and one person finally said, "That's bullshit. If I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. I'm destined to find it. I'm going to try to find it."
Oh, well, this is why we are, I identify with the word seeker, like,
Yeah,
really strongly.
yeah.
Um, and I think of myself as a recovering know-it-all. Uh, and I much has so happy to say I don't know now.
Yeah. Well,
And I have divested myself of opinions, which was very hard as a comedian at first, because it is a great swath of the comedy making business. And then, I must say, once I discovered this phrase, and this is one of those thoughts that you keep thinking it, and then maybe you'll actually believe it, and then maybe your feelings will change. I started telling myself and thinking super consciously, love the question, love the question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
And you asked me about falling asleep and what keeps me up. And that to go to this is the honest truth. When I'm truly overwrought, I will say, well, look, you say you believe in loving the question. Everything you're worried about is just a question. Why don't you just love the question? Just love not knowing. And why don't you just do what you say you believe in? And that's not always easy. But once I do land on reminding myself that, it's very effective. And I really do believe it. I mean, I do believe that we've become overly invested in answers.
yeah. Well, this is you're on. I'm probably wrong about everything. And hey, all hail Fireside Theater. Phil
Yeah.
Proctor says everything you know is wrong. What a great time! But then when the guy challenged me, the person challenged me on the Buñuel. I morphed it into the question: if the journey's more important than the destination, why do we have to name or seek a destination at all?
Well, it's good to not wander.
That's the funny thing, Beth, because the people who changed the world in the Paris in the 20s were inventing flânerism, or flawnerness in, psychogeography. You just sit at a coffee house and wander aimlessly, and then you'll
Right.
stumble into things. So
Why
you,
do we have to have a destination? I mean, I think there is something about the human nature that is goal driven.
yeah,
And I think as long as you can change the goal, it is part of the drive. I don't know why. Maybe a magnetism. We have a sense of, magnetic attraction, how we have
that's
that with
good.
love. I mean, maybe creating a destination is a kind of love quest.
Yeah,
You kind of court your destination, and you
yeah,
become, in essence, that you almost, by seeking, is almost like flirting with your destination, and there's more of a love language that begins to evolve than like marching ever forward towards an achievement. For me, that's why that would be why naming a destination love.
very good. So you've accomplished a lot, Beth. In your accomplishments, how do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What's first, second, and third?
Oh gosh. Are there other? I feel like there's other things that are in there.
There's
'Cause I was like,
definitely
I
others.
have been lucky. I've had some good luck in timing. Um, like vision. I think part of my success has to do with like envisioning. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know if that's a skill really, though. It's a drive to sort of see into a curiosity, I think, is a big part of my success. If I'm
that's good.
success My accomplishments, I would say, I don't know about the ones you've said. I mean, one always has to be grateful for luck, because anybody who has any good fortune knows that they've been lucky.
Yeah,
So that, to some degree, curiosity to some degree, some skill for sure. I mean,
yeah,
what did you say? Ambition. I would say, instead of ambition, I would use the word determination and hard work.
yeah,
Like, I definitely, some people who come to me for help, I just want to say work harder.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, just work, so hard work and determination. If you consider that ambition, though, the word ambition hasn't always been exactly, I guess ambition is a kind of drive, all those words, that clump of words.
No, that was good because that's what I'm saying. It's about rewording. People often come to me with my three options and go, well, I have other ones. So that was good. So a poet says that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
English?
What form is your inner consciousness in? She's laughing. I mean, metaphorically, what form is your inner consciousness in?
Oh, Flowers?
Oh, that is a great. I've never had that answer. Flowers. Okay. Two of my film heroes have these mantras: ignore yourself, there's no self expression. Jazz pianist says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. I know it's a stupid question, it's both, but just your thoughts.
Mhm.
Is art making, comedy making, book writing, is it
Yeah.
more self expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, culture, and environments are dominant?
Well, self capital S. I mean, as we are all unique expressions of you know, of the self, the highest self. There's a principle in yoga, svidhyaya, that is self knowledge that is can be interpreted, I guess, both ways. But um, I think there's a both. I mean,
Yeah,
the higher consciousness comes through a particular vehicle that you have the responsibility of continuing to shape.
yeah,
And obviously, when higher consciousness comes through me, what comes out isn't the same as what's going to come through Thelonious Monk. I mean,
yeah,
you know, if higher consciousness chooses where to throw stuff, wouldn't higher consciousness is higher, and they're like,
yeah,
give this thing to Beth. She knows what to do with this.
yeah,
Certainly things have come through. I mean, super simple answer. I mean, a story example. I'm frustrated with stand up as it is. I
yeah,
For reasons that are also a great story, but I'll leave out for time. Um, I I find myself in the comedy clubs thinking there has to be a better way. Following Andrew Dice Clay at the Comedy Store, this, that, and the other thing. There has to be a better way. I don't know what the better way is. Loving the question without having that phrase. What is the better way?
yeah.
Then I'm at a venue that you may remember called the Women's Building. It was
Oh,
a
yeah.
art space downtown, Judy,
Of
Chicago,
course.
that whole deal.
Yep.
And I was doing a show that I had called Globomania, and I'm getting ready to go on tour, and they're really laughing. And I knew it was a funny show, but not quite as funny as they thought it was. So in the meet and greet, I was like, "What's up? It's not quite as funny as you thought it was. When was the last time you laughed?" And they were like, "Oh, we don't laugh. We're women. We're artists. We're lesbians. And if we go to comedy clubs, they make fun of us." And I was like, "Oh my, when I get back from tour, I'm going to make you a show. It's going to be unhomophobic, unxenophobic, unmisogynist. It'll be uncabaret." Where did
Wa-
that come from? Where
Wow.
did that come from? The uncabaret. I wasn't a cabaret girl. I'd seen cabaret with my
Yeah.
boyfriend and his boyfriend. It was an immersive experience. Bada boom. But it really felt like a download, and I
Yeah.
did it partly because it was a download, and that the title of it has always been somewhat problematic because it sounds a little bit like it's more cabaret than it is, and it also sounds like it's very and negative, and it hasn't always been that because it's very pro.
Yeah.
So is the yes and the no, and but I've always stuck with it because there was something very powerful about it, and I feel it was given to me. So, but would it have been given to
Yeah.
someone else? I had shaped my vessel
Yeah.
very perfectly to receive that idea.
Yep. It's really good. So well put, Beth. You're really a wordsmith and you communicated to me really well. We have got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate this. The really hidden question in the last one, which you really got the question and you answered it so well, is can art making be egoless?
Well, probably there are people who do those sand mandalas, but don't they look at them and go, "Boy, I did a good job. This my sand mandala is really better."
This is the interviews I love the most are where I sincerely crack up. I love because my friend says Bob Dobbs in fact says when you're laughing you're learning, and I think it's true. It's like, but do artists have moral obligation?
Yes, because I think everyone has moral obligation, and art doesn't exempt you from your human moral obligation.
Is perception reality?
Oh, I Is there reality? I mean, aren't we at a time when we like wonder, is there a reality? What is real? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's Lily Tomlin says reality's just a collective hunch.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, God, I wish we would move towards this, but I mean, less I do like to also say somebody once when I was very overwrought, again, before I understood to love the question, before my great revelation. Um, I was going through a big life change all at once. It was one of these revolutions that you get a few times in your life. And I was just running through every uncertainty with a friend of mine. And he just looked at me and he said, honey, less will be revealed.
Yeah.
Because we're always telling ourselves more will be revealed. And more usually isn't revealed. The more you know, the less you know, the less you know. And so, what is reality, Jerry? It's like,
Yeah.
but I do think, as we learn more about science and now our minds are being blown as we look out to the universe. And certainly like just this year, NASA was like, hey, we don't want to upset you, but the UFO thing, like it might actually be real. And, so our reality, so I think perception and yeah, I think Lily Tomlin had it. Let's just stick with that.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Talking too much.
Yeah, this is so fun. You know what Bob Dylan says? Don't ever tell anyone everything you know. And like if we met at a party and we started talking in the corner, I feel so connected with you. I was like, I want to tell you everything I know, Beth. And it feels like you're telling me everything you know. And it's a funny thing. And the funny thing is Dylan learned that from the Bible. And it's like, oh. So tell me, Beth, one major element of your creativeness, which you've done for many years, one major element that's stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Nothing has stayed the same. I mean, nothing.
Wow.
What has ever stayed the same for 2 minutes? I mean, if you want to talk about consistency, I mean, I put a pin in my visual works because so that is the most change because I stopped doing it. Yeah, I would say more than what stayed the same and what changed. I would say I have been willing to narrow my narrow. I was a dancer and a choreographer,
Yeah.
and I was like, in the real world, that's not going to fly. I'm not going to, that's not going to happen when I go to New York and I'm faced with the real dancers. Writing, writing is such a through line when I look at my writing.
Yeah.
From my themes from when I was very young until now seem very consistent.
Yeah.
So the writing has changed, but I feel as a writer, there's no surprise. And yeah, my hair has changed a lot. That's the thing that's changed the most. Hair color.
Hair color. There you go. Okay, this is stay witty and wise like you are. 5 Alan Watts questions just in a few words.
Okay.
Briefly. Who started it all?
We did.
Are we going to make it?
We're going to make something.
Where do we put it?
Where do we put it?
That's good. Answering your question. Okay, 4. Who's cleaning it up?
Oh, we are.
Is it serious?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's Alan Watts gone. Couple more and we're out of here. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
I really don't care.
Yes. You're walking down the street today and you meet yourself as a 12-year-old. What would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh, we've just entered a science fiction movie that proves that this is impossible. I shouldn't say anything or I'm going to fuck everything up. Please don't listen to me.
That is a good answer. I've never had that answer. How do you find peace of mind?
Service, meditation, service to others, being less self-centered. I think that the act of growing up is essentially knowing yourself better and being less self-centered, taking care of yourself more, being less self-centered.
Beautiful. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
How do I know it's good if I never had it and I never want it? Something that is considered good that I don't want.
That's it. That's it. It's considered good. You never had it, but you never want it.
Ooh, I'm very averse to the idea of a cruise.
That's the cruise. Yeah. You know the answer I get the most? Fame, money, and heroin.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that weird? Okay, a couple more. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Oh my God, I'm not answering that question. I don't want to make that a reality at all. That's the most horrible thing.
That's good. I had one of my favorite answers to that was, I wouldn't be in a situation.
Yeah, I reject the whole idea of that question.
Okay, sorry. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret and hide it at the same time. Beth, you've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I really appreciate it. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
What's it really all about? What's it all about, Alfie?
Yeah.
Is it just for this moment we live? In some ways, it is all about this moment for me. It is one of the things that's kept me going with On Cabaret, which is an experience, a live experience with an audience at an elevated level and other artists in the now to make material about the now. And love is only present in the now. And, we experience life in the now. I mean, it's a very Eckhart Tolle answer, but in a certain way, I love the way the word now looks, the way to picture that word explains more than I think we've been given about it, because the way the N and the W are roller coasters and with those ups and the downs, and that the O sits in the middle of it with this giant sort of open pool of, heart and openness and connection and full circleness, but without the, roller coaster, which is a non-consistent feeling and idea. You can't really get to that thing, that openness that we picture to be this sort of elevated idea of nowness. So I'm not sure even if I know for sure, but that is what came to mind. If you want to say what's it all about, now and the way that now and change are connected. I go back to what I talked about change, and it makes us unhappy, but we have to change to be happy. And that contradiction and conundrum and the way now and change are at play all the time.
Yep. Play is a key word. Really cool. Ruth Draper said this: the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds really good. And you've done this with On Cabaret your whole career. How do you accomplish that?
Oh gosh, I think that's an ambitious goal. I don't know. I don't know if I do accomplish that. My approach with the audience now is they're tired. They don't want to do anything else. They worked so hard and have so many feelings, and it's so much now. It's a lot, and they got there. And I feel like right now, where we are in 2022, we're recording this. I'm like, you guys are good. Thank
Yeah.
you for just getting this far. I don't need them to get onto the stage with me. I have it from here.
Oh, that is so cool. You're like, you are the modern Ruth Draper, and you're saying, I've gone beyond that. So this beautiful last question is, what gives you the most optimism?
My work at being optimistic.
Oh, isn't that cool? So,
I mean, I sometimes say these are hard times for an optimist, but
yeah,
what gives me optimism is there's so much beauty, in the world, and to remember that surprising things happen, and some of them are actually good. I mean, we tend to, as humans, we haven't talked about storytelling that much, but when you look at a plank of wood, your eye goes to where the knot is, and what the knot is where the tree grew around an infection, and that's the most interesting part of that piece of wood. And I think as a story, as a race, as a human race, we are storytellers by nature, and we do go to that place because it's what's interesting. The
yeah,
problems are so interesting. I mean, they're great. Why wouldn't we think about the problems? What's more interesting than the problems?
yeah,
So, this is why we have all the practices now, the meditation and the gratitude and the, help, all the practices. So the prayer and the this and the that, and you do your yoga and you do your jujitsu, whatever you do.
yeah,
And so I think for me that optimism really comes from, and I really, even after 9/11 especially, was like unexpected things happen, surprising things happen, and some of them are good, and some of them are wonderful. I mean, this past
yeah.
election was, when we're recording this, was a very wonderful surprise to a lot of us.
Amazing.
And we have to remember that it makes us seem so smart to be, "Yes, oh, it's going to be awful and it's going to be like this." And, we can easily build these cases for how bad it is. Now, I've been worried about overpopulation since I was literally 13, and it's one of the reasons I decided not to have children. And I do see the planet exploding.
Yeah,
But when I say to myself, all I'm seeing is Earth. I don't even know that Earth is even a big piece of I just try to get bigger and bigger. So what keeps me optimistic is my lack of being able to see the whole picture.
yeah,
My grandiose ideas, my hope that, I can make sense of it for myself. And then at the same time, that infinity loop, just to go back to that, the same time, knowing that I can't see the whole thing. You never know. I've had so many miracles in my own life. One definition of the word miracle is a shift in perception.
yeah.
And that is my favorite one. So I think miracles keep me optimistic and hopeful. I'm able to experience them in my own life and show up, do the work, and hand it over. That's my
Wow.
recipe.
Super great recipe. Just to close out, it's amazing because one of my heroes, Frank Zappa, said, "I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure." And when you said the word lack, it implies. And then the first question I asked
Somebody
is,
asked me in an interview the other day, "Have you ever failed?" I
well,
said
that's,
I've already failed 4 times in this interview.
yeah,
I mean,
well, Beckett says it great. He says, "Fail once, then fail again better." But
yeah,
but
fail.
it's
Anyway.
the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich says the best thing for a human being is another human being. In the
Oh, that's a
last,
great answer.
yeah, and then the
I love
last
that.
question
Oh,
is
I'm gonna go back and can we just start at the beginning? I want that to be my answer. That was a great answer.
but no, Beth, you got to admit, this is to let go of bestness is a great answer. Believe
Yeah.
me, I've done this
All
for
right.
40 years, and I love to rate the answers, how much they touch me. That touched me. And then the last question I got from what they asked Groucho Marx, probably blocks from where you are at the end of his life. They go, what gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people.
Mm.
And so it is this connectiveness, this commonality that we've shared in the conversation. But just to bring it to the miracle word, I mean, you got to have ESP, because I often end with this. McLuhan said, communication of the new is a miracle, but it's
Mm.
not impossible. And so, I always say, well, the joke is, the priest is crossing the Canadian border, and he's got a little flask, and the custom officer says, excuse me, sir, what's in that flask? And he goes, it's water. And the custom officer takes the flask, he goes, that's whiskey. And the priest goes, it's a miracle. I have had so much fun sharing time with you, and it's going to be ingrained in my memory that we could just laugh,
Yeah.
just sincerely. I laugh a lot, and at the same time, I really learned a lot. So thank you so much,
Thank
Beth.
you, Jerry. Thanks for having me. What a lovely
Really
time.
fun. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope we can talk forever and ever, infinity loop.
Okay. Thank you.